Please, could all the people come and join us on the actual stage, because this is now, we're going to open it up to the audience for questions and answers. It's an opportunity to actually discuss these issues, and we're going to conclude at exactly 9. So this is your opportunity to ask brief questions, as brief as possible, and also to introduce yourselves. But please ask your questions into a microphone.
The microphone should be asked to a mic. Neri has the mic. Thank you very much, first of all, to all the speakers. I will start with one question of my own, and obviously we'll collect a few, and every time we'll answer them. And I wanted to start with asking the distinguished rabbi, following what you said just now, in view of the political conflict that has been going on and even becoming more heated, the two parties tend to negate the past of the other side and his connection to the territory. How do you deal with that, those radicalization processes that the two sides undergo, the two sides that argue that the past of the other side does not exist? How do you contend with this as a religious person? But we'll take a few more questions. Please raise your hand, and please try to ask short questions. Neri, let's start here. We'll take a few questions first. Yeah. We'll start here at the bottom. I'm sorry, we can't hear the question. You have to wait for the microphone. The question is addressed to Dr. Nasser. You said earlier, you're wondering if, I'm sorry, it's hard to hear this. I mean, we cannot hear the microphone. I'm sorry, I cannot hear because the voice is totally distorted. I have no influence over what is happening there. I'm sorry, I cannot hear. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I saw somebody waiting on this side. Can we please pass the mic? That keeps us awake. The shifting of the microphone. Short questions, please. I would like to ask your permission, instead of asking questions, to say a few words. And if you don't like this, stop me whenever you want. We only have 15 minutes to allow them to answer, so it has to be less than a minute. First of all, as the Rabbi Rabinovich said, all the speakers, except for Rabbi Rabinovich, had a very specific agenda and a sweeping criticism leveled at the Jewish side, criticism against the Antiquities Authority, and there's no representative of the Antiquities Authority here. It's inconceivable to be here without hearing their side. That's one thing. Another point, all the speakers forgot, and perhaps I'll say a word about that first so that my position will be clear. I definitely agree with some of the criticism. It's impossible that Elad will finance archaeological excavation, as it has a very specific Jewish agenda, and it can definitely influence to remove Muslim layers in order to reach Jewish layers. It's inconceivable, that's clear. On the other hand, we have to take into account that you cannot reach cooperation with Muslims or Muslim archaeologists or Arabs, because they would be suspected of collaboration. Hence, there's no option of reaching this ideal state in which Arabs would be involved in the archaeological excavations. And for the very same reason, they do not participate in the elections to the municipality of Jerusalem. A third point, all the speakers forgot for some reason that there is a political struggle going on here over the sovereignty over East Jerusalem, when the Arabs take advantage of the sanctity of the Temple Mount for that struggle. And all of a sudden, Temple Mount is not just Temple Mount alone, but it's the vicinity around it. Every excavation that is hundreds of meters away from Temple Mount immediately brings about statements that Al-Aqsa is in danger, immediately as if there was an attempt to destroy the temples, something that never happened. Even the very near excavation of the Western Wall tunnels, if you don't know, it was done outside of Temple Mount. It's got nothing to do with the stability of those temples. The UNESCO experts said this with respect to matters of the whole city. Nobody mentions this. All the riots that broke out in September 1996 because of the northern opening was a cynical exploitation of the opening of that venue for tourists. And for this, soldiers were killed and 40 Palestinians in Judea and Samaria in those riots that were called Al-Aqsa. Why? It didn't endanger the temples or anything. And the same applies for the Mughrabi ramp. Let's not forget the sovereignty in Temple Mount, unlike what was said here, is in our hands, legally speaking. The Supreme Court determined this more than once. But there's a political struggle. The Arabs mobilized the Temple Mount in favor. The last thing that I want to say, I'm fully aware of the fact that I actually take more of the time given to me. I want to remind the people sitting here what the Arabs did. First of all, they never allowed archaeological excavations in Temple Mount lest there would be a proof found for the existence of the temple on Temple Mount. And all those involved in this field know that. Professor Reiter says that the Waqf does not believe that the temple was there. But in their own book, From Mecca to Jerusalem, he brings those evidence from Muslim resources that the Muslims knew full well that the temple was there, and they called Jerusalem Beit el-Maqdis until the 11th century in every Muslim literature. One last sentence. In Committee 4185, dozens of offenses were mentioned concerning the law of construction and planning, and the Palestinians ruined every Jewish antiquity they found. In September 1996, they established the Solomon Stables Temple. In August 1999, they renovated. You get many examples, and that the speakers will respond. The speakers will respond if you allow them to. Okay, two short questions. There are two short questions. You wanted to ask a question? Please. A question. One question. We're under time pressure here. Okay, I'll ask the distinguished rabbi what you think about the fact that non-Jewish people visiting Temple Mount. We haven't heard anything about that. I would like to ask the speakers to relate to the questions that were raised by the audience, and also perhaps things that were said by the other speakers, in order to use this platform to conclude and add things that you didn't say perhaps in your own presentations. There's another question. אני חושבת שאותה חוברת
The little booklet seems to sum up much of what has been said in Hebrew, and it ends with the sentence, Israeli society must accept that it has been essential, the Temple Mount has been a central sacred place for Muslims for 1,000 years or more. So I'm asking all the people who represent the speakers here and this organization, could there be a second sentence following that says something to the effect that, and wouldn't it be fair to ask Muslims to contemplate perhaps recognizing that also some aspects of this precinct are also sacred to Jews? In other words, it seems that for all your critique, much of which, as an art historian, as I could accept. Don't you think it's fair also to at least not infantilize the other side the way you do by saying, oh, they didn't really know there was anything there? I mean, don't you think that you could at least ask the other side to step up to the plate so you can have a kind of not unilateral situation?
תודה. תודה. הדוברים יגיבו לזה, אנחנו פשוט חייבים להפסיק לקחת שאלות ולתת להם לענות.
We'll respond to this. If you just keep to 2 minutes, we'll be able to finish at 9. We'll start with you and end with Jonathan, who will conclude. So first of all, I'm not Dr. Nasser. I'm en route to becoming a doctor. And concerning the question, what I meant to say with respect to the Israeli public, when I say that, for example, the Strauss House is built and there's a decision made that this is where the office of the Western Wall rabbi would be placed, I'm asking myself, based on what do they make their decisions? I, as a Muslim, Christian, Jewish resident, have I received the platform upon which to voice my opinion? So many demands were raised. Not everyone agrees that there would be a visitors center or bathrooms or toilets built there. Different have different opinions. With respect to El Haram, the Temple Mount, we heard the rabbi. I understand that even Jews do not believe that Jews should visit and attend that place. But if you follow the academic integrity line, there's a concept such as reciprocity. Just as I don't want to ruin Antiquities and to treat them in a very, very honest, transparent way, this is what is expected of all sides. And when you want, and I'm not representing the Waqf, I'm not representing any side, I'm speaking on my behalf only. We should use this organization called UNESCO, and they can oversee all the parties to make sure that every site would be used with the proper sensitivity it merits. That's it. Alona, please. Okay, a few points. First of all, they said that everyone here is against the Antiquities authorities or the Jewish organizations. I am not against the Antiquities Authority. I think that all of these antiquities are made accessible with the help of buildings that are built by architects, and I think that architects are simply not there. There's only one architect, Aryeh Rachamimov, in this particular relevant case, and he's the one who also protected the convinced the other organizations that they need to have that protection given to them. There was also an architect on behalf of the organization, the park and antiquities authorities. So no professional discussion is held because every discussion is seen as political criticism. There's no master plan in the Western, or the master plan in the Western Wall Plaza is not connected to the master wall plan of the old city. So we are professionals, we are civil servants, we do have responsibility for that area, especially since it is so sensitive, and we should hold that discussion. And if we are so proud about what we're doing, why are we hiding it? Why do we not know about those plans? Why don't we know anything about those plans? And I'd like to say one more thing. I think that the argument that you make, that we might make those places accessible, to make them public and open, I truly accept that, but that is not the situation on the ground. Because in those places that are related to the foundation of the Western Wall heritage, you can enter with a ticket, with a guide. You cannot go on your own when they don't want you to come. We create places that you have to enter, and everyone tells us exactly what to see and how to see. We cannot have a direct, unmediated experience in those places, in those times, and at those moments that we wish to be there. One last comment, that of what Alona said reminds me that the Wailing Wall has a national dimension, not just a religious dimension, and also a financial dimension. It's mundane matters. What can we do? Not too much is being said about those matters. And the same applies to other holy sites. If you want to enter the El Jazar Mosque, or if you want to enter the El Omari Mosque in Ramla, also has to pay for an entry ticket. That's the way of the world, to maintain holy sites by charging entry tickets, because they become tourist sites. So I would like to give an answer to Dr. Berkovich's comment. We're not always on the same side necessarily. We don't always share the same worldview. And it is true, the Muslims in the Middle Ages thought that the Dome of the Rock was built over the Solomon's temple, and there were many references to that. The reason why the Dome of the Rock was built specifically on that location, it's actually a structure that glorifies that rock. And it is related to those traditions that go back to Solomon, but obviously in his Arab name, Suleiman. And there are obviously other legends about Abraham, and so on and so forth. However, when the conflict started, the political conflict, especially since the Balfour Declaration concerning Temple Mount, what we see happening there is a gradual process of denying the Jewish ownership or possession or affinity to Temple Mount. When the Muslims do their work in a Temple Mount, when I said that they don't feel like they're violating the antiquities of another site, that's what I meant. Perhaps another comment that does not pertain to the antiquities, but it does have to do with the future of Temple Mount and the Western Wall, and we're dealing with that, volatile area of all places. I don't know if there are people amongst us that think that we do not want to concede Jewish sovereignty over Temple Mount. What is it that we mean by the word sovereignty? We have to sort of break it down. When we say that we don't want to concede our sovereignty, do we truly indeed to go and make sacrifices on that Temple Mount? Do we mean to, just like Yehuda Glick means, and Yehuda Etzion and others, who plan to actually break down and demolish those mosques, and in their place, Yehuda Glick is not exactly, it's a very similar ideology. Yehuda Etzion is definitely dealing with that. Or just to break down, dismantle, and in its place to construct a third temple. When we talk about sovereignty, do we mean the permission to visit the place or to pray in that place? What do we expect from that future state? In 1967, the government set a certain policy. It said, Temple Mount, no, we can approach the Temple Mount, but we cannot pray there. Quite the contrary, they encouraged Jews to go to the Western Wall. The Western Wall was built as a monumental area. That was the pretext for the demolition of the Mugrabin neighborhood. And if you look at different forms of resolving conflicts in holy sites, there are a number of ways of going about that. One of the ways is to expand the holy compound to provide solutions for all the fighting sides. In the case of the Western Wall, it is exactly the same issue. They took this holy territory of the Temple Mount, they took it more to the west of the Western Wall, and allowed Jews to have some sort of a compensation for the loss they experienced for hundreds of years, and the fact that they lost their right to pray on Temple Mount. Another example, as a compensation for the Reform and Conservative movements and the women of the Wailing Wall, they talk about the building of a second Western Wall, and that is not known by public. The Sharansky outline, the Sharansky plan, talks about a western wall that would call the Azerat Israel, that would be in the same size and the same level of the Western Wall Plaza, and there are already plans and drafts of statutes for that place, and everything is done secretively without holding any public discussion, and that would come at the expense of the archaeological park of Jerusalem. And I don't know if you would want to give up on it, Shmuel, because in it, if we do not take the interpretation given by Shimon Gubson, you have the rocks that actually are interpreted to be the remnants of the destruction of the second temple, and that reinforces the Jewish national narrative. I would just want to add a few points. First of all, Rachamimov was appointed only after he finished Kedem. It is not true that he oversaw himself, but because he's not here, I will definitely be his advocate. The second point, I never ever heard that rabbis need to be involved in every field pertaining to planning that has anything to do with religion. Like, I don't see any demand made toward architects or planners, and I accept with what Mr. Segal said. I think that when it comes to Temple Mount, even if there is an opinion of Jews who truly object to go to Temple Mount, Jews should be involved in any planning that pertains to Temple Mount. And what happens there is exactly the opposite. Nobody asked if the Solomon stables should be built or not. Just like you are present when it comes to every Jewish plan, I want to see our presence with every plan pertaining to Muslims. One more thing about what you said about the entry to the Western Wall. Every person can bring his own guide, listen to the explanation the way they want. It is a controlled area. It's very narrow. There are safety requirements. We try to manage 24 hours a day, but there are a lot more people who seek to visit it than the place that can host them all. And the last thing, whilst Jews do not deny the Muslim past, if you walk into the tunnels, you could see what the temple was, the first and the second, and then what happened afterwards. The Muslims erase all the past of the Jewish people in Jerusalem. This is something that is inconceivable. Thank you very much. And my question, Rabbi, what do you think? I'd be very happy. I'd be very happy if Temple Mount was totally closed to all. What about allowing everyone to visit the Temple Mount without, perhaps entering the sanctuary? Yonatan will sum up those words addressed to Emek Shavet, the Antiquities Authority. We only have 2 minutes. Okay, so I'd like to start with the fact that I truly hope that in the next conference, the Antiquities Authority representatives would attempt it. Regretfully, as we said in the previous conference, they refused to come. I truly think that perhaps there are changes in the Antiquities Authorities now, so it would really be proper to have them voice their opinions. National organizations and agencies very often avoid coming, and I truly hope to see change in that. And I truly join this argument. I think it's important for them to attend such conferences. A word was said about advertising of Emek Shaveh concerning various publications about Temple Mount. I won't elaborate too much, but ultimately, Haram al-Sharif, when you look at it from the architecture or the archaeological point of view, it is a precinct that includes dozens, hundreds of different monuments, all of which are connected to the Muslim sanctity of that precinct. And ultimately, this in and of itself is one of the most impressive sites, historically speaking, that preserve buildings that are hundreds of years old. This was the intention behind publishing it. And the question was raised, if we had all managed to look at this monument that is called Haram al-Sharif and the mosques and the other buildings that can be found in it, the arches themselves, can we see them as a historic architectural monument that is exceptional? and he's so very close to us. To conclude, I would like to say thank you to all the speakers. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the interpolations as well, and all those who arrived. And I think that the discussion would ultimately open, and it's not to be concluded here, and to be continued. Thank you very much.